Hello and welcome to the backfield. I'm your host Connor Schaff, and today I will be going over a bit of a chaos scenario for the college football committee. And what I really wanted to do today was a bit of a different style of video where we kind of just converse, me and you, but it's really just me conversing to you because that's just how this works. And I kind of just want to walk through what will have to go through the committee's mind, assuming all of these things that are possible to happen do happen over this final weekend of college football. And we all know at this point that the committee has kind of put themselves in a horrible position because of how little they've taken into account head-to-head matchup, common opponents, stuff like that. And we are now in a situation where we have a chaos situation. The committee are honestly absolutely screwed. So that's what I want to talk about. So let's start by going over the matchups that are important to the college football playoff conversation and what has to happen for the committee to get in this playoff situation. So we have Ole Miss beating Mississippi State as expected. We have BYU beating UCF as expected. This is where our first surprise happens. Washington takes down Oregon at home, and Oregon moves to 10-2. Oklahoma takes down LSU as expected. Vanderbilt takes down Tennessee, which is a slight upset, but Vanderbilt are the higher ranked team. Virginia takes down Virginia Tech. Alabama takes down Auburn. SMU takes down Cal. Notre Dame takes down Stanford. Utah takes down Kansas. Georgia takes down Georgia Tech. Indiana takes down Purdue. Then we have our next upset with Texas taking down Texas A&M. We then have Michigan taking down Ohio State. We have Texas Tech taking down West Virginia, Miami taking down Pittsburgh, and Arizona State taking down Arizona. So what we are left with is this conglomerate of a rankings. That's what we'll kind of mess with today. I just kind of made a rough rankings, and then we can go from there. So Indiana would be at 1 at 12-0. Georgia, Ohio State, Texas Tech, A&M, and Ole Miss will be your next 5 teams, all at 11-1. I don't think that either Ohio State or Texas A&M would drop significantly, as they still have much better resumes than a lot of these 10-2 teams. Notre Dame would be at 8, or Oklahoma would be at 7. Notre Dame would be at 8. I think Michigan would jump all the way up to 9, ahead of Alabama at 10. Texas would be at 11, BYU at 12, and this is kind of where we get to problematic territory. Miami at 13, Vanderbilt at 14, Oregon at 15, Utah at 16, Virginia at 17, Arizona State at 18, and SMU at 19. So let's talk about what the glaring problem number one with this is, that BYU is here at 12. And this is part of the issue, is how can you balance the fact that you don't punish Texas for the fact that they scheduled Ohio State in the non-conference, while also giving benefit to BYU being an 11-1 team? It's really not fair to Texas to punish them as a 3-loss team, because there's a point where the committee puts themselves in a situation where if you're punishing losses like Texas to Ohio State and Michigan to Oklahoma, why would anybody schedule an out-of-conference game that is worth anything? If Texas right now was 10-2 with wins over Texas A&M, so it would be number 5 Texas A&M, number 7 Oklahoma, and number 14 Vanderbilt, with only losses to Florida and who else did they lose to? Florida and Georgia. That's easily a playoff team. There's not even a conversation to be had there. But because Texas has a loss to what right now is the number 1 team in the country, they're being punished for it. Let's look at the same thing with Michigan. Michigan is right now a 9-2 team, where imagining they go 10-2. They have wins over Ohio State. They have and they will have a win over what will almost certainly be a ranked Washington team if they beat Oregon. So you have 2 really good looking ranked wins, including a win over what was the number 1 team in the country and still the number 3 team in the country. And one of your 2 losses is to Oklahoma out of conference. So let's say they scheduled an FCS team instead. they would now be at 11-1 with one loss to USC. That team would be ranked in the top 5 right now. Let's take a team that didn't play any notable opponents out of conference. Indiana in the non-conference, and I will pull this up just to confirm it because it does need to be said. Indiana in the non-conference played. They played Old Dominion, Kennesaw State, and Indiana State. Literally, almost every single Power 5 team would go undefeated with that non-conference schedule. I don't think that's a controversial thing to say. I think that's a pretty accurate thing to say. What is stopping Michigan and Texas from doing that exact same thing? How unfair is it to the teams that were willing to actually give us good games that we wanted to see instead of absolutely nothing burgers? Like, Indiana played 3 teams that nobody wanted to watch them play. Michigan actually played a team that got people's eyes on the screen. Texas actually played a team that got people's eyes on the screen. Why should they be punished for doing that? I guarantee you, if both Michigan and Texas miss the playoffs with the wins they have in this scenario, nobody's scheduling good out-of-conference games. Because why would you? Texas already plays a difficult enough schedule. They already have wins over the number 7 and number 14 teams in the country in these rankings. Michigan already has a win over the number 3 team in the country in these rankings. Why should they play an extra non-conference game that they could lose? It's insane to me that we as a collective have to stop being so bullish on teams that have more losses than we like to see. Just because you have a team like I'm trying to think of a good example here for reference. And I feel like this would be a great reason of why BYU is going to be ranked lower. So let's talk about this here. So BYU, the unfortunate thing about BYU is because they're in the Big 12, they just do not play as many good teams. They are going to finish the season with 1 ranked win and a crushing loss at home to Texas Tech. I would feel pretty good. Obviously, I don't want to get too much into hypotheticals. I would feel pretty good if they had Texas' schedule, that they would not have beaten Oklahoma, they would not have beaten Ohio State. Maybe they could have beaten Vanderbilt. They probably would have beaten Florida. And they also wouldn't have beaten Texas A&M. So this is at best, 9-3 team with Texas' schedule. And that's why I think Texas will be ranked ahead. Because clearly the committee, for one, and we can debate this all we want, I think it's pretty ridiculous that the committee is pretty much only using the eye test and not caring about resume at all. But it's very clear that the argument is that Texas would crush BYU in a head-to-head game. It wouldn't be close. Texas, if BYU had Texas' schedule, they would at best have their same record. I do not think that's a controversial thing to say. I actually think, and I think most would agree with me. And this is where it gets really tough, though. Because how do you... now, let's do another one with Miami. Miami has now beaten Notre Dame, and they lost 2 conference games. Why shouldn't we be giving more credit to Miami for the fact that they not only scheduled a non-conference game that was difficult, they won their difficult non-conference game? Why is Miami ranked behind Notre Dame? There's zero excuse for it. There's no justifiable reason for why Miami should be behind Notre Dame. And so what I want to do first here is, so this is what I think the committee will do. I think that this will end up being the rankings of the committee. And that would have a cutoff of number 10 Alabama getting into the playoffs. But I think if and we can run through the situations here. And I also have a bracket for what I think would happen after conference championship week, to an extent here. So I believe SMU will win, Texas Tech will win, Indiana will win, and Alabama will win. So that would get Indiana as the 1 seed, Texas Tech as the 2 seed, Ohio State as the 3 seed, A&M as the 4 seed, Alabama as the 5 seed, Georgia as the 6 seed, Ole Miss as the 7 seed, Oklahoma as the 8 seed, and Notre Dame as the 9 seed, and then SMU and Tulane as the 11 and 12 seed. Now, there are a couple different teams that could get in here. Do you punish Michigan for losing in the conference championship game? I don't think they should, but they might. So then you have Michigan versus Texas versus BYU versus Miami, really. That's my opinion. I really think... I was watching the Joel Klatt show earlier, and he said he thinks that a playoff debate would be between Oregon and Michigan. I have no idea if Oregon loses to Washington this week, they are not sniffing the playoffs. They have by far the worst. Their best win would be over what I think would be a 9-3 USC team. That I think would be ranked right here. Then their next best win after that would be Northwestern, Minnesota. It doesn't look good after that. Vanderbilt, their 2 losses would be to Texas and Alabama, your number 10 and your number 11 team. They would have a win over a Tennessee team that I still think would be ranked even if they lose this game at 8-4. I think there's a good chance that Tennessee will be still ranked ahead of James Madison in North Texas. And we can talk about all we want about whether that's ridiculous or not, but I still think that's the case. Then you have Miami. Miami has a win over number 8 Notre Dame. They have a win over what was a top 25 Pittsburgh team. Their losses are to the ACC champion and Louisville, which will be a 7-5 or 8-4 team. That's a decent resume. BYU has a win over number 16 Utah. Has a win over what is right now a top 25 Arizona team. Only losses are to a top 4 seed Texas Tech team and our bracket we made number 2 Texas Tech. That is their 2 losses. They haven't lost to anybody else. Why would Oregon be ahead? And honestly, why is Notre Dame ahead? Notre Dame has the exact same resume Oregon would have in this situation. They would have a win over USC and nothing else good on their resume. Now they have a bit of a better resume. They have a win over what would be an 8-4 Pitt team. They have a win over a 10-2 Navy team, most likely. Doesn't compare to Miami's resume. Doesn't compare to BYU's resume. Doesn't compare to Vanderbilt's resume. Doesn't compare to Texas' resume. Doesn't compare to Alabama's resume. The only reason Notre Dame are in the playoffs is because the committee thinks that they are a top 10 team and are a better team than Alabama and Texas and BYU and Miami. And I agree with them. They are probably a better team than Alabama, Texas, BYU, Miami, and Vanderbilt and Oregon. That doesn't mean they deserve to be in. I do not care which team is better. What is the point of playing these non-conference games? What is the point of playing these games in general if you are not going to respect the result of the game? Miami beat Notre Dame. Miami deserves to be in the playoffs over Notre Dame. And when most likely inevitably they aren't, I think all hell should break loose. I think people should lose their minds, and rightfully so. Because the committee is so in their head about Notre Dame having to be in these playoffs that they are screwing over so many other teams that deserve to be in the playoffs more than them. Explain to me how an Alabama team that has wins over number 4 Georgia right now they have a win over number 4 Georgia, number 14 Vanderbilt, number 19 Tennessee. How are they ranked behind a Notre Dame team that has wins over number 17 USC, number 22 Pittsburgh in a game that, mind you, Pittsburgh literally said they weren't going to try in. And that's it. Their next best wins after that are Navy and Boston College. I don't know. It's not a good NC State, probably. I don't get it. But so this is the situation we're in. You pretty much have a playoff argument between 10-3 Michigan. So we have Michigan at 10-3. We have Texas at 9-3. We have Vanderbilt. Oh, I turned on caps lock. Vanderbilt at 10-2. We have Miami at 10-2. What is happening? There we go. And we have Oregon at 10-2. So what do you do here? Now I think two teams are already eliminated. I think that Oregon has no chance with their resume. Their resume is way worse than three of these other teams. And Vanderbilt literally has a head-to-head loss to Texas. It would be absolutely ridiculous for Vanderbilt to get in over Texas. So you're left with three teams here. Now, if it was up to me, Miami would be in because they deserve to be in. And for that matter, I think Michigan and Texas would be in over Notre Dame and Oklahoma. Because Michigan and Texas have better resumes than Michigan and Oklahoma. Now, okay, I'll be honest with myself here. I didn't consider the fact that Michigan has a loss to Oklahoma. So I think most likely Oklahoma would still be in, and probably Michigan still gets in as well. So this is what my playoff would be. And the scenario I think is going to happen at this point. And let's turn off our red. Okay, so I think 1 would be Indiana, 2, Texas Tech, 3, Ohio State, 4, Texas A&M. Now, I think it'll definitely be an interesting debate of who would get in to the 4 seed between Texas A&M and Alabama. I just don't know if the committee... We're projecting here that Alabama would have to jump 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spots. There's technically 6 spots. Now, they're aided by the fact that they jump Georgia, so that gets it down to 5 spots. And they jump Michigan, which gets it down to 4 spots. You still have to jump a team that you lost to, mind you. Like, they lost to this Oklahoma team. So, it's definitely an interesting debate. I think most likely Texas A&M gets it. Then we have Georgia, or then we have Alabama. Then we have Georgia. And then we have Ole Miss. This is where I think the committee will do exactly this, assuming everything we thought happened. And this is where it gets interesting. After that, I think Miami should be the next team in. Miami has a win over Notre Dame. The committee clearly values Notre Dame. And Miami also has multiple other ranked wins. Miami deserves to be in the playoffs. Number 9, I think that it turns into a debate. I do think Oklahoma gets in next, even though Texas has a head-to-head win over them. I think that's a really tough one for me, because I think the committee should be treating Texas as a 10-2 team. The biggest issue is Texas still has a loss to Florida, so it's basically, if you're comparing losses, and you can always get in the debate about comparing losses. Oklahoma has losses to Ole Miss and Texas. Texas has losses to Georgia and Florida. It's Florida's one conference win. I still think I think Oklahoma would be ahead. I honestly do. Then I think you're kind of left in the spot between Michigan, Texas, and Notre Dame. And I'll be honest, I don't think Notre Dame deserves the playoff spot. I don't think I'm going to give them the playoff spot. I think at 10-3, I'm going to give Michigan the playoff spot. I think Michigan deserves it more than Notre Dame does. They have a better win by far than Notre Dame has. And honestly, their losses aren't too much worse. Notre Dame's losses are to 4-8. Michigan's losses are to 9 and what would be around 17-18. And that includes the fact that Michigan was willing to schedule an out-of-conference game. And honestly, I don't think we should be treating Notre Dame as playing non-conference games. They are an independent team. They should be punished for that fact. And that would leave me, I think Texas would be the first team out, and Notre Dame would be the second team out. So I think Texas would be ranked at 11, and Notre Dame would be ranked at 12. That is my personal opinion for these rankings. But back to what the committee will do. Who will the committee put in between Michigan, Texas, BYU, Miami, Vanderbilt, and Oregon? I think they're going to try and please the crowd and put in Miami. So this would be our playoff bracket. I don't think that this is something that would make people happy. I don't really know if this is the correct decision, but I think this is what they would do. So this would give you your top 4 seeds of Indiana, Texas Tech, Ohio State, Texas A&M. It would give you matchups of Alabama versus Tulane, Georgia versus SMU, Ole Miss versus Notre Dame, and Oklahoma versus Miami. Honestly, quite exciting games. Obviously, outside of the 5-12 seed matchup, it's quite exciting. Then you get Indiana versus Oklahoma or Miami. You get Texas Tech versus Ole Miss or Notre Dame. You get Ohio State versus Georgia or SMU, presumptively Georgia. And Texas A&M versus Alabama or Tulane, presumptively Alabama, which is the SC championship we were denied of because Texas A&M lost to Texas. So that would leave us with... So what we would probably assume that we would get Indiana versus Oklahoma, Texas Tech versus, I think Notre Dame would be favored over Ole Miss. We would have Ohio State versus Georgia, and we would have Texas A&M versus Alabama. And those would be honestly crazy, crazy games. Now, I would pick Oklahoma to beat Indiana. I would pick Texas Tech versus Notre Dame. That would be a very interesting matchup. I know I've been downing Notre Dame this entire video, but I firmly believe the reason why Notre Dame is ranked where they are is because they have played like a top 5 team in the country since week 2 of the season. But week 1 and 2 of the season still happen. I think Notre Dame would probably beat Texas Tech on a neutral field, which is what these quarterfinals matchups are. So we would have Indiana, or we would have Oklahoma, Notre Dame. Then we have Ohio State versus Georgia. I think Ohio State wins that. And then we have Texas A&M versus Alabama. I think Texas A&M probably wins that. So that would leave us with Oklahoma versus Texas A&M. So that would definitely be quite something. And that would leave us with Ohio State versus Notre Dame. And that That gives us a rematch of last year's national championship. So that would be a crazy, crazy game. And I think, funnily enough, all of this chaos, my prediction for the national championship game most of the season has been Texas A&M versus Ohio State. I still think that would happen. And I still think Ohio State would be the national champion. So I'll be honest, that would be a very exciting playoff bracket. Does that mean that those are the teams that deserve to be in? No. So it's a very two-sided coin. But I think the thing I'll finish off with here is just going through what I actually think is going to happen. And I think it'll be a lot less chaotic. I don't think Washington will beat Oregon. I actually think out of the 5 matches, even with... Okay, so I think... Well, I'll walk you through. I don't think Washington beats Oregon, but I think it's possible. I don't think Vanderbilt beats Tennessee. I think it's less likely than Washington beating Oregon. I feel more confident saying that Washington will beat Oregon at home than that Vanderbilt will beat Tennessee on the road. I think that... I don't think that Texas A&M will lose to Texas. This Texas team has just been way too inconsistent, but we saw how they rallied and played so well. They played well. They more so took advantage of Oklahoma's mistakes, but they crushed Oklahoma in the Red River rivalry. They already crushed in one rivalry game, so I think it's very possible they do in the second as well. But I still would pick Texas A&M, and I would say it's the third most likely of those 3. I don't think Michigan beats Ohio State. I had this for most of the season. I said I think Michigan's going to beat Ohio State. I just think this Ohio State team is so much better than anybody in the country. Like, realistically, when Michigan beat Ohio State last year, that team still had holes. There are not really holes in this team. I think the biggest criticism you could give is that Julian Sand is inexperienced, and there's possibilities that he could struggle. I don't think so. I think this team is just destined for the national championship game, even if they lose to Michigan. So I think this year is actually one of the most likely years of the 5 years that for them to beat Michigan. And I still think Miami beats Pittsburgh. So, yeah, I think if I had to pick an upset out of the 5, I'd pick Washington to beat Oregon. I honestly think Oregon is probably a little overrated. I can't really understand how they got ranked ahead of Ole Miss. I get Ole Miss is in a bit of a mess right now, but they have a win over number 8 Oklahoma. And Oregon's best win is over number 17 USC. Honestly, I think they're probably propping up USC a little bit. Like, I don't know. This has been a very I don't know video. I kind of just wanted to today go over how much of a mess the committee has put themselves in. Like, how can you look at this and think, oh, that's what the playoffs should look like? That's 11-1 BYU should be ranked at 12. Notre Dame, with the loss to Miami, should be ranked 5 spots ahead of them, even though they have the same record. I don't know. It's tough. It's tough. I really don't know what the committee has been. I get they've been really heavily using the eye test. That's a recipe for disaster. I'm sorry. There's a reason we play these games. I don't care how good a team has looked. If you lost a game head-to-head to somebody, you lost the game head-to-head. Should have won that game. That's all I have for today, though. If I keep going, I'm going to be ranting on forever. This video is already 30 minutes long, so if you stick around for all of it, I really appreciate you. Make sure to let me know in the comments down below what you think of this format of video. Do you like kind of this conversational style of video? Just kind of ranting about how bad the playoff committee is? I think we can all get behind that. But yeah, make sure to interact with the video any way you can. It all helps grow the channel. Make sure to comment down below what your predictions for this following week are, what your predictions for the committee if this chaos scenario happens. But thank you guys so much for watching, and have a good one. Bye.